Hey guys, I'm Pastor Kevin. I get the privilege of pastoring our Kinder location, and it is such a privilege to be here with you today. I want to talk to you today about the God of my path. This is a story from Abraham, and maybe today, like you've kind of settled in life. Like maybe you were believing God for something at one time, and now you've kind of lost that. Or maybe you were feeling like God gave me something and I knew God was going to do something amazing in my life. I'm not feeling it now. Like time has went by and stuff I'm just not seeing where God is moving. Maybe at one time you were like, man, me and my wife are going to be the coolest family on the block. And now you're like, God, I just want to feel you do something. I want to see you do something. I just want a house on the block. Well, maybe you were single and you were dreaming, of a godly man. And now it's like, I just want a man with a pulse and breathing. And I mean, like, God, right now, a job is even optional. Or maybe you've just given up on what God has for you and you've settled in life and you say, hey, this is what my life is going to be. If that's you, I want to tell you, you have no idea what God can do through a single seed of faith that's been planted. Let's look at Genesis 15, and this is the story about Abraham and Sarah. God told them, he said, I am going to bless you with a child. But the problem was Abraham and Sarah couldn't conceive. So they're having to watch everybody else around them having babies. And let me ask, have you ever had to watch somebody else get their blessing the whole time God made you wait on yours? So this is the story of them. God says, I'm going to bless you with a child. And then all of a sudden, nothing. That's where I want to pick up. It says in Genesis 12:1, it says, get out of your country. This is God talking to Abraham. He says, get out of your country, get out from your family and from your father's house to the land that I will show you. I will make you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great, and you shall be blessed. Now, I can only imagine what's going through their minds right now. Like when God says, I'm going to give you a son, I'm going to bless you, I'm going to make you a great nation through that seed. I can only imagine like Sarah and Abraham are like, all right, let's start picking out some baby names. And I could see Sarah like, what's a good baby name? And Abraham, you know how us men are. Abraham would probably be like, well, maybe we should name him eventually, or maybe we should name him next year. Sarah would be like, no, 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 that's too prophetic. How about oops, or surprise, or maybe how about we name him finally here? Sarah's like, no, 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 no. At our age, we should probably be better off naming him Miracle. Then, in the hype of everything, a month goes by, and yet you're not pregnant. And another month goes by, and another month, and then a year, and then 2 years goes by. And you're distraught. You're thinking, God, where are you? And where is the promise that you've given us? I want to jump a little bit to Genesis 15, chapter 15, verse 1. And it says this. It says, sometime later. Now, we know that by the time from when he spoke the blessing to the time that they saw the blessing, there was about a decade that went by. Could you imagine hearing, I'm going to bless you with a child, and you're excited, You're picking out baby names and you're getting the nursery ready. If it's a boy, we'll do the gladiator theme, and if it's a girl, we'll do camels. And all the time you're doing this, time is going by and you're not seeing what God spoke. And then 10 years goes by and you're like, God, are you even here? This is what happens to many of us. We hear the promise of God and we get really excited at what God is promising for us. And then time goes by, and the more time that passes, the more we get in our routine and we get in our life and we say, you know what? I'm just going to settle with this is how it is. It's never going to happen. Or we do like Abraham did and we force it a different way. You know the story. Sarah says, I can't conceive. Abraham, why don't you go and sleep with the maid? Abraham's like, it sounds like a good idea to me. I mean, my wife's telling me to. Says sometimes later, the Lord said to Abraham in a vision and said to him, don't be afraid, Abraham, for I will protect you and your reward will be great. But Abraham replied, O sovereign God, what good are all of your blessings when I've got no son? I believe we hear things like, you're going to pay off your credit card debt by the summer, and then your car breaks. And it's like, God, what are you doing? God, I know I heard you. I know you said that I can do this, and we've got a plan put in place, and I've got all this stuff that I'm gonna do, and then my car breaks, and God, you know I don't need to spend money on my car. I need to spend it on the credit card debt. And the next thing you know, it's like we just give up and we're like, well, it's not gonna happen, so let's go shopping. Or maybe it's like God might have told you, you'll be dating the one you're gonna marry by Christmas. But then Christmas comes, and the only 3 dates you've had were with me, myself, and I, and you had to pay for all 3 of those. And then we begin to wonder, God, have you forgotten about me? And we settle in life because it just doesn't feel like God is doing. Just like Abraham, he didn't see anything happening from his perspective, so he lowered his expectations. Here's the problem. In humans, we think addition, but God thinks multiplication. See, Abraham was thinking, God, you're going to give me a son. But God was thinking, no, I'm going to give you a nation. The Bible says that a sower went out to sow a seed, and it fell on good ground. And the ones that fell on good grounds, one seed produced 30 or 60, and some even produced 100-fold, just from a single seed. I hope you know that just because you don't see it happening doesn't mean he's not doing something. When you plant a seed in the ground, you don't see anything happening at first. You're watering that seed, you're giving it everything that it needs, and then all of a sudden one day you go back out there and there's this tiny plant that's come out of the ground. But for those days or weeks that's went by, you didn't see anything. Just because you don't see it doesn't mean God isn't doing it. Let me tell you a story. There was 2 young 14-year-old boys, and they went to a revival one night. There was a big tent revival. They show up, but they couldn't find anywhere to sit. So the 2 14-year-old boys, they decided they were going to leave. And there was a door greeter that was there, or an usher that was there, that sees these 2 14-year-old boys walking off. And he goes to them and he says, hey, y'all don't leave. I will find you a chair. And the 2 boys stayed. One of them, their life got amazingly changed. And God used that one person to reach multitudes of people. The two 14-year-old boys, one of them's name was Billy Graham. Thank God for that usher. Thank God for the people that feel like what I do is no big deal. Let me tell you, what you do matters. Whether you're in the kingdom opening doors, or whether you're on the stage, or whether you're sitting here preaching to the cameras, what you do matters. Just because you don't see God doing things miraculously and quickly and fast, and you feel like, oh my gosh, time has went by, let me tell you, God has not given up on his promise. So the story goes that Abraham, he was in a tent, and he was in his tent, and he was telling God all of the things that he doesn't see. He's telling God, I don't see anything happening. God, don't forget your promise. God, and that may be you. Like right now, you may be in a season where you're looking and saying, God, I'm still not married. Just by the way, don't forget, you promised me that. God, I'm still in debt. God, I had a bad report come in and it's not good. God, don't forget. Abraham's in that same place. He's in his tent and he's saying all the things that he's not seeing happening. But if God met all of our expectations when we expected it, he would never be able to exceed our expectations. Let's look at verse 5. It says, Then the Lord took Abraham outside. Let me tell you, here's what happens. Oftentimes we get in our little world and we start thinking about ourselves and we start seeing things and we view it as small. And sometimes God has to take us out of our space, our little confined space, into something much bigger. Look, let me tell you, when you serve, when you pray for that person, when you're praying for your kids, mamas that are raising kids, this is not insignificant things. When you start seeing yourself as this is just a small role, God sometimes has to bring us out of our limited context and bring us into a point of view where we see that what God is doing is bigger than ourselves. And that's what he does with Abraham. He takes Abraham out of the small tent and he takes him into something bigger than himself. Honestly, today, some of you need to get outside of your context. Some of you need to get outside of your perspective. Some of you need to get out of the unmet expectations in your life and start seeing that God has a bigger plan than just what you think it is for you. We have to remember that sometimes and oftentimes God tells us, the way you're viewing this, Abraham, you think that I'm just going to give you a son, but I'm looking at a nation. I'm setting you up for a nation. We look at ourselves as this is just a small part. I'm just a little bit of nobody. God sees you as bigger. Understand, God's ways are bigger than our ways. His thoughts are higher than our thoughts. We have to remember that God is doing something more in our life. He's setting us up for something, and sometimes that takes time. Sometimes God's path God's path in ministry is never a straight line. If that was the case, we would go from point A to point B, and oftentimes we would miss some stuff in our life that helped mold us and shape us, and we would not be able to steward the blessing at the end of it the way that we need to, and we wound up messing it up and losing it. Sometimes God has to take time to build in us so that when that blessing happens, we're able to steward it. This is what he says in verse 5. It says, Then Abraham, then the Lord took Abraham outside and said, Look up at the sky. Count the stars if you can. That's how many descendants you will have. I wonder what was going through Abraham's mind. Like, God, I was just thinking you give me a son, but you thought about nations. See, Abraham was thinking addition, God was thinking multiplication. I think some of us settle and like in the beginning, we believe God is going to do it. He's got this. And now I'm getting older and God, I just don't see how you're going to do it. My situation's getting worse. We started out in a really good time. We started out believing what God was going to do. And then we look at our circumstances and our life and our age. And God, I just don't know if I have enough time. How are you going to do all this? Understand something. God is not worried about time as much as he is worried about timing. Because he can do more in 1 year of your life than you can do in 100. So understand, if you're still here and you're still breathing, God's not done. He hasn't forgotten about the promise. He's preparing you for something bigger. You know, one thing that I thought about that hit me when I was putting this together, when he brought Abraham out of that tent and he said, look up at the stars and count the stars if you can. Abraham was thinking stars and nation and sun. But God was thinking about you. Y'all remember the song, Father Abraham had many sons, and many sons had Father Abraham? For I am one of them, and so are you. That night when Abraham looked up at the stars, God was thinking about you. Look at Galatians 3:29. It says this. It says, if you belong to Christ, then you are Abraham's seed and heirs according to the promise. Abraham's thinking a son, while the whole time God is thinking of you. Don't measure God's unlimited power by your limited expectations. Mamas who are raising those kids, praying for those kids, don't underestimate the power of that prayer. The one who's contemplating starting giving, don't underestimate what God can do with that seed. But I don't have big faith like that. I don't have big faith like Abraham did to leave my country and go do what I feel like God is telling me. Let me tell you something. You don't have to have big faith. You just have to start with faith. God says the faith of a mustard seed can move mountains. You just got to start with faith. God said it, and I believe it no matter when he does it in my life. Let me tell you, if you've given up on God's promise, let me tell you about a God that sees your faith, hears your prayer, and honors your sacrifice, who is here to answer your prayer. But just because you don't see him working right now, doesn't mean he's not working. But oftentimes he's working in you first. So when the fruit comes, it won't rot. See, he's got to change something in my heart, in my life, so that when the blessing is here and he does the promise that he promised, that I'll steward it in such a way that it blossoms and it produces fruit 30 and 60 and 100-fold. So sometimes we don't see what God is doing because God is actually doing it inside of us. Because he's got to get the dirt right in our heart for what he's spoken to us. Now, Abraham and Sarah were an amazing story about faith, about starting with the little things, about not giving up. Let me encourage you with this one last thing as we get ready to wrap it up. Because I know in my own life, like sometimes I feel like, God, this is it. This is what you've spoken, and I don't see how you're going to do it. And so I run out and force it. Try to force those doors open. God, I know you told me I was going to work here. God, I know you told me this was going to happen. And I'm trying to open these doors and force these doors to happen instead of waiting on God's timing. And that happened to them too. They wound up having a son with the handmaiden. who wound up later on, the descendants are still fighting because they didn't fully wait on God. Let me encourage you. I know 10 years might have went by. I know time may be looking like it's growing short. Wait on God and His timing. Let God direct your path. The blessing He spoke, He didn't forget it. And He's right on time with it. Even when we think He's 4 days late, He's still right on time. So I just want to pray for you. Maybe you've settled in life. Maybe you've given up on what God has spoken to you or called you for. I want to pray for you right now that God would just stir in you and reignite that fire, and that you would just wait on the Lord and His timing. I pray for everyone, Lord, today that is just settled in life, that is given up on what You've called us to or what You've spoken for us, Lord. May we all be reignited, Lord, in the blessing and the promise that You've spoken over us and the stuff that You've given and You've said that our life would be like, Lord. May You continue to work inside of us that when that blessing comes, Lord, that we will be able to steward it in such a way that it yields a fruit, a harvest of 30 and 60 and 100-fold. Father, we ask this in Your name. Amen.